Hey guys, I'm going to change all the engine mounts on this Chrysler 200, but the first one I'm going to do, it's the hardest one. You could barely see it from here, but it's not all that bad. It's just you just have to get a couple things out of your way. We're eventually going to want to go in through the top. I'll show you from the other side. You can see two bolts down there by the light, but from the other side you got better visibility, but a little bit harder, longer reach. What we're going to be taking off eventually is this plate right here. There's 3 bolts on the top and 1 on the side right where I'm touching. There's one of the bolts right there. There's one on the inside, and then we're going to eventually take that off, and we're going to have to get that out of there just for maneuvering room for that back engine mount. Now I have it jacked up, fairly high so I could get under there comfortably with a creeper, but I'm not on a lift by any means. And it looks like it'd be easier just taking the air box out. You can wiggle it around the back, and there's a lot of lines back there. Your engine control module's right here, so it looks like without the air box in there, it's going to go straight in the back. So, but underneath, I'm going to unbolt it first. I'm going to show you, but it's just from the top, you're going to want to be prepared for that. We're not going to get that right now. I'm going to go underneath and unbolt the lower part of the engine mount. But for the clearance, we are going to have to remove that plate. Okay guys, this is the bottom. This is the hardest bolt to get to, but I'm using just a Harbor Freight flex head ratchet with the shallow well socket. There's not much room up in there, but once you get it loose, you could get in there a wrench. I don't have a ratchet wrench in 16 millimeter, but that would be ideal also. They weren't actually too tight, but let me show you what I'm using. Because the bolts are aimed a little bit backwards. This one you could get a wrench on if you had to. That one, there's not much room. Being some changing this one also, I figure if I run into any trouble, it's only a matter of 3 7 bolts, and I could drop this whole middle piece here, and then that would give you a little bit more room back there in case you came in the interference area. There, a ratchet wrench really would be ideal from the back, from the other side. But it's that bolt right there that I'm touching. It's going to be the hardest one. And then there's this one and 2 more behind it, but they're easier access. We're just breaking these ones free now. And then after I get the front 2 out underneath the oil pan, right along here, I'm going to put a 4x4 on the floor jack to support the engine while I take them bolts loose. But right now I'm only taking the front 2 out. Gives you a little bit more access before you have to put the jack in. And then once I put the jack in, I'll just be on that side, and I'll unbolt them from the back. Hey, this is the back of the motor mount, these 2 bolts. These 2 bolts are, they're still 16 millimeter also, but they're much easier to get onto with a ratchet, wrench, whatever you got to. There's one there and one right there beside it. I already took out, but they're got some room there. 16 millimeter, like a flex head ratchet wrench would have been really nice. My set skips that number, but it goes from 15 to 17, so. But if you do happen to have a 16 millimeter flex head ratchet wrench, that would have been on the front where the bolt closer to the driver's side. That one, there's very limited room, and I was going a couple clicks at a time with a ratchet, but if you had a ratchet wrench, I'm sure you could get more of a turn on it. All right guys, I'm going to unbolt that, and then the 15 millimeter in the front of it, the one that goes through the engine mount, I'm going to unbolt that while I'm down here too. This one right here is the one I was referring to. It's a 15 millimeter, and it goes through the middle of the engine mount. It's what connects like the upper bracket and your new engine mount that you're replacing. So I'm going to break it loose with the 15, and I do have a 15 millimeter ratchet wrench, which might work better on it. But until we loosen the upper bracket, I'm not sure if that bolt's going to clear the down pipe. It might hit it until we unloosen the top bracket. All right, I'll get back once I get the bolt out and see how it's going. Okay guys, this bolt will come out. We can't get it back in whenever with the exhaust pipe air like that and that engine mount on top. That's why we're removing that top plate of the mount. You'll see it all makes sense towards the end of the video, but for right now, this one's an 18 millimeter and it goes right there. That was a 15 millimeter that went there through the engine mount. This is like a bell housing bolt that goes into the block. We're taking it out so we can move this, because you can move the mount around a little bit now, but there's no way to get it out. Like, let me see if I can show you. See, the mount's everywhere there. And it's the forks of the mount bracket, that's what holds it there. But now we got this 18 millimeter out of the side. There's a couple bolts from the top, and then we'll be able to take that bracket off of there and then take the whole thing out through the top. Because no matter which way, it looks like you could wiggle it out this way, you could do this, you could do that. Don't even try. Just unbolt this, the bracket that goes to the block. We got the one bolt here, there's 3 on top up here that we're going to do from the upside, and then we should be able to pull the whole thing out the front. All right guys, see you up top. And from the top, I was having an extension going down, and I got the front bolt, and then this bolt's just a couple turns and they come out finger tight. But whatever kind of extensions you have going down there, these ones are, I'm using 1/2-inch drive just because the extension's longer, give a little bit more leverage. But you could use 3/8-inch drive, anything like that. Just, you know, use a breaker bar, you know, a piece of pipe, whatever you got to put over the handle to break it off pretty easy. Or to break it loose, rather. Hopefully you don't break it off. But I don't think them things are going to break no matter what. But all right, there's one more that's closer to the block. It might be a little bit harder to get to. You could kind of see it in the corner down there, right beside this socket. It'd be a little to the left of it. There's one more bolt that's closer to the block. You'll see how easy it gets in there. And other than that, it should be coming out. On that last bolt closest to the block, this long ratchet, there wasn't enough room to maneuver it. But just a regular 1/2-inch ratchet I have on the 18 millimeter down there. And the whole ratchet can move in here underneath. The other handle was just a little bit too long and get kind of hit up against the shock tower. There, now they're all at least finger tight loose. I could take them out with my fingers, and then I'm going to just pull the bracket apart, and then take the bracket part off that goes to the block, and then just pull the engine mount out from the bottom. All right, guys, I'll be back. All right, guys, closer to getting her out. This is the top bracket we just took off, and that's the 2 wires you just want to pop out of these kind of clips. Nothing involved, you just push down and pull the wire out the side. And this comes out through down here. This is how you're going to take that out. Now the only thing left in there now is the engine mount. Going to put this aside, and then I'm going to reach in and see if the engine mount will come out the same way. It might be a little bit... let me get another little hand light. I don't know if you could see the mount still back there. But there it is laying. Let's see if it's easier to pull it out from the other side. It can be done from this side, but it looks like there's a wire right there that I really, if I could avoid it, I'll avoid it. Actually, this is where I pulled it out of, right below the heater core hoses. Between that and the catalytic converter, and you could just pull it out the top. A lot easier than having to deal with them wires coming out this way. You don't want to hit the ECU, or not whenever it's that easy. I mean, you could say he tore out in pretty good. 2 places. Wow. All right, pretty good. Pretty good time to replace them all then. All right, before we get back under there, we want to make sure a new part matches the old part. And see, this is what happens. They tear the rubber tears on the inside. When the motor mount goes, it's usually the rubber part. And then this one of them moving, it puts more stress on the other ones, and you usually have more than one bad mount at a time. And then this is a new one that seems to match pretty good. I take the old ones out, especially if I'm going to be away for a minute. Just put like an F or any kind of mark that lets you know which way it goes in there, because you don't want to get confused. Go back. The holes line up anyways on this, but there's a lot of times you're going to thank yourself for putting a mark, giving you a little bit of direction which way it went back in. All right, I'm going to move down. What I'm going to do, looking at it from underneath, it would be this bolt I'm going to put in there loosely, and then I'm going to put the top bracket back on and make sure the bolt that goes through this way, it goes through without, because you remember how close that catalytic converter was. So we're going to make sure that goes. Then we're going to put the rest of the bolts in. All right, guys, I'll be back whenever I'm underneath there and then show you what I'm talking about. Hey, guys, I've seen some people putting these in from on top, but you have to get under to put the bolts in anyway, and this is just too easy to slide up in between. Here's your catalytic converter over here and your axle shaft here. Just put it in on an angle. It's that easy there. Now this is the one bolt. Let's see if you can see any better here. The first bolt, easy to get to one on the outside. I'm going to attach out one, and then I'm going to go up top, and we're going to attach this before we bolt everything down. Otherwise, this is where we had the clearance with the bolt. It barely comes out, but going back in, you just want to leave a little loose. We want to put this in together before we tighten it to the block and the frame. All right, guys, taking off the top part of that engine mount. I brought it out through the top last time, but I found going back in, it's from underneath. I mean, you do every time you got to take something out past computer wires like that, or even vacuum lines, anything. If you can't avoid it, you know, I say take the easy way out. Stay away from it. There's plenty of room underneath. And I got the light up there. Hopefully you can see there's one bolt here in the new engine mount. And then I'm taking the bracket, this piece that we took out through the top. And this is the bolt that goes that way. So there's enough room in between the axle to slide this up. And slide it on this way. And what we're going to want to do is put the bolt through this before we bolt it to the block. And then I'll just go with the one bolt from down here and then leave it loose and put all the bolts in from the top that I took out. And then we'll tighten everything up, and we should be, that's the hardest mount. Get that one out of the way, or if this is the only one you're doing, great, it's doable. I mean, I'm not on the lift, I'm on the ground, but you're going to want to get the front end up as much as you can just to give yourself some room. All right, go. I'm going to put that through it, and then I'll be back and show you from the top what we got to do. And then that's it. We'll move on to the next engine mount. Okay, I found getting the side bolt back into the top bracket here. I had to put the jack underneath the oil pan to get that bolt right there started in the side. It was just off a hair. You don't want to cross thread these things. When I took the mount off, usually you do support the engine when you take a mount off. That one didn't move, and there was some play in it when I took it off, so it just slid out. But to get it back on right, all them bolts are still loose, but they're all in on the bottom. The ones behind the cross member are in, they're all in. This one here, the back one, I mean, it is doable. You're going to be doing a lot of this, like with your fingers. That's the hardest one. Light's really not on it, but see, it's back there. That's one that takes a couple clicks on a ratchet to get it out. I mean, you'd be there, 5 minutes getting one bolt in and out, but it's doable. Everything else is very easy to get to. But whenever you do jack up these oil pans, you don't want to jack it up in the middle. Even though it looks like that's a good support place, you always want to go in the corners. They're stronger. Any which way you got to move the motor. This way we're trying to move the motor up and on that corner a little bit, put it under that corner, and just barely a pump. That's all it takes. But you don't want to strip out the bolts while you're under here. All right, guys, I'm going to start the bolts on the top, and then we're going to tighten the one in the middle and get everything snug, and then we're going to give them some good torque. All right, guys, on the top, this is where I was going through. If you were looking at the engine, right to the left of the dipstick, there's a little hole that you could get your hand down to put these bolts into the top plate. They're lining up pretty good, so I'm going to go ahead and put some Loctite on the threads. The bottom ones I got in, but not the whole way down. I'm going to add a little Loctite to them. Those ones we had to move, and you don't want to play around that goo. But, if you have Loctite, if not, they sell, single packs, or just torque them really good. But, I like knowing I got something on them anyways. It always helps out because you're not going to get a torque wrench in there. You're going to just be tightening as hard as you can. So, a little bit of Loctite goes a long way. For several bolts on here, this spinner came in handy, to get your hand down there and put the bolts back in the block. Anywhere you got tight quarters, but these are a Harbor Freight. I know they were under $5 for all three of them. You get all three different sizes. Even if you only use them on this job, they're going to save you a little bit, wear and tear on your hands. Oh, just a little tip of failure to pass on, because these ratchets, they fit in there pretty good too. That's a little stubby flex head, but I'm getting the most use out of this right now. All right, guys, just a final note. These shallow well, these are Quinn from Harbor Freight. They came in pretty handy on there. This flex head 1/2 inch ratchet came in pretty handy. Any stubbies you got are pretty handy. But the thing that would have made this a cat's ass is a 16mm ratchet wrench with a flex head just like this. My set skipped 16. It's a cobalt set, but that would have been real nice. So just if you're looking to do this, that would make the job nice. Otherwise, that one hard bolt on the lower part of the engine mount, it's just like one click at a time. But it's doable. You could do it with a wrench, you could do it with a ratchet, but one of these in a 16mm would have been, ideal. All right, guys, I'm going to put this on its own video, but all 4 engine mounts are going to be on there on the playlist under the Chrysler 200. That way, anything you need to come back to this car, chances are sooner or later it's going to be done. All right, guys, have a good one.